Kuldeep got disconnected.
Yeah, I think he should be joining us soon.
Kuldeep got disconnected.
Yeah, I think he should be joining us soon. Hello, everyone. Those of you who are watching us, we are just waiting to get started. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is Faz Sayed. I already have one of my guests join us, Dr. Taneja, and we are just looking for our friend Kuldeep, who should be joining us in a couple of minutes. He's having some technical issues with his mic, so we'll be getting started. As always, people who are technologists, they always seem to have technology problems around them. So, right, CK?
That's true. They always say that technology fails you when you need it most.
Yeah, that's very true. I usually joke around with my wife. I'm like, I hate technology. I don't understand it. So I try to get out of those IT issues at home. But usually, the other thing is that once you've worked in technology, it looks like if to everybody you are their technician. So even if you can't solve their problems, you are the one. So I try my best.
That's right. But you are very gutsy. You say you joke around with your wife. It takes guts for that.
I'm always getting myself in trouble exactly for that reason. I have not learned the art.
Or we need to learn the art how to joke around with wife.
Maybe. Depends. I think our wives, when they talk to each other, then they'll know. So, thank you, team. Thank you, everybody who has joined us. And please stay with us. This is Faz Sayed, and I have Dr. Taneja, CK Taneja, with me. And we are just waiting for Kuldeep to join us, and we'll get going in just a couple of minutes. Sorry for the delay, but we'll just start in just a minute. I am going to post this link on.
think Kuldeep is ready to join.
Hello, Kuldeep. Can you hear us? CK, can you hear?
I can hear you. And I can probably take Kuldeep on audio here.
Okay, let's just do one more test. CK, are you there?
I am.
Awesome. Kuldeep, can you hear us?
He can't hear us both.
Yeah. I think with the spirit of being on time, and I know our dear friend and guest Kuldeep is having some technical issues, what we will do is we have some folks joining us, so we would get started.
So, CK, I can hear you, but I can't hear Faiz.
And you should be able to hear now.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, that's great. Kuldeep, can you hear me now?
Very, very soft.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll do our best. Good morning, everyone. Evening, afternoon, everybody who joined us. Thank you. So my name is Faiz Sayed. I am based in Chicago, and I am an Agile transformation coach. I work with companies, businesses in their enterprise and business agility, coaching different organizations. I have with me my colleagues and friends, CK Taneja. He's Dr. Taneja as well. And then I have Kuldeep Nayak with me. And he's a principal consultant with Infosys. CK is a business transformation coach, but I'm going to let them. I won't be able to do justice to their introduction, so I'm going to have CK. Maybe you can go ahead and give your introduction to the folks.
Hello, everybody. My name is CK Taneja and Kevin Klein, CK. That's the relationship. So I have been an organization change management and turnaround consultant for about 20 years, helped various organizations around the world. And that's what I'm doing here now. Know Faiz very closely. We worked together for almost 2 years now. Thank you. Kuldeep.
Hey, good morning, everybody, or good evening, depending where you're joining on with us. My name is Kuldeep Nayak. I'm a principal consultant with Infosys Limited. Not been in transformation as long as CK has. I think my transformation experience is probably half of what his is. I've been in the Agile transformation world about maybe 8-10 years now. Have met both CK and Faiz at a recent engagement, and we've just started having a lot of deeper conversations. So glad to be here today, and hope we have a good conversation.
Thank you. And folks who are watching us on YouTube, please go ahead and as we have these discussions, put your questions and feedback on the chat. And I would like to bring your questions into the conversation as well. And we look forward to not only this one, but also future sessions with our dear friends here. So the topic of our session today is leadership role. And the topic, it says leadership role in Agile. And but if you think about it, most of the companies today, and according to one survey, there are about 95% of the companies today are using Agile in some form or fashion. So today it's not even about doing something in Agile. All the companies that have anything to do with product development, they are going Agile. It's really boils down to how do we work in the new culture today, and are we actually ready in that culture? And all the players, whether they are leadership, whether they are individual contributors, as in developers, or everybody has a role to play. And what we wanted to do was discuss the role of a leadership in an organization for the most part. And as we transition from some traditional development methodologies, project management methodologies, some companies are there completely, some companies are not. We will basically be trying to understand from our friends here in a discussion how how the role of a leadership changes and what are the expectations and things like that. So CK and Kuldeep, the first thing I wanted to do was really talk a little bit about leadership and management, because both of the terms are used in the industry, and sometimes they are used as synonyms. But I'd like to deep dive into it. So maybe CK, you can start us off, and what does leadership mean to you in
So
general?
we confuse the terms leadership and management very commonly, and the confusion is because we call the people who are at the top of the organization as the leaders, whereas in my opinion and understanding, also if you go back by the things that are taught, leader does not need a position. A manager needs a position. So a leader is somebody who can influence people around, get them excited, get them motivated, get them to follow on people. So, and another major difference between a manager and leader, then as soon as we create that distinction that a leader is not somebody who has the position, then we also start seeing the other stark difference, which is a manager is worried about the work that you are doing. A leader is worried about who you are and how you are growing. So, for a leader, the people are important. For a manager, the work is important because that's his role. So that's where I start with. Kuldeep, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think when we look at this whole conversation around leadership and management, right, there's one of them that I feel like leadership is more, as CK mentioned, it doesn't deserve or it doesn't actually have a set position of in a hierarchy or a rank. It's rather something in terms of how we influence somebody else. Whereas, the management position itself is something that is, something that you're creating to drive a certain outcome, or almost like I have some work to do and I basically need oversight there, and there's going to be some policies to be implemented, and I'm going to have in a certain way. So one to me is really, as we think about it, has the influence aspect to it, and then the other one is more like a short-term kind of, hey, what's my short-term vision in terms of managing something?
Yeah. And then that ties into our agile thinking very clearly, because and that's why it's, like as you were saying, agile is being used by many companies. I say every company is using agile or it needs to use agile mindset, because as we said, leader is looking at the outcome and not at the action, whereas the manager is looking at action. And that's exactly what Agile is telling us. Start looking at the outcome, measuring the outcome, measure the value, not about the activities that you are doing. So that's where the leadership in Agile flows into that together.
Yeah, thank you for that. What I always observe in the transformations I'm in is that obviously the differentiation is not made when people are actually working in those roles. Like we were talking earlier, those both of those roles are, people use them,
Interchangeably.
interchangeably, and like you said, there is still a confusion around that, and like you said, the hierarchy related to management versus leader doesn't meet that hierarchy as well. Um, so now let's talk a little bit about, regardless of whether a manager is acting like a leader or a manager, but ultimately, as we talk about transformation, and there are all kinds of transformations, right, these days, especially in order for companies to be competitive in the industry that they're in, that is changing so fast, there are certain core values that are needed. And so I wanted to discuss that a little bit with you, and with you both. And what are some of the core values that you look for in a leader? Let's kind of identify about 3 to 5, and then so CK, what do you think? What are some of those values? that you look for in a leader, or try to help them understand those values?
So, a leader is somebody who sets the vision, who creates the buy-in, who aligns people to the vision. Who does Manager is looking at compliance. Leader is looking at innovation, and leader is looking at how this is going to help you grow. So one of the things that initially also I said, manager is looking at work, whereas leader is looking at people. So if I start looking at developing people, growing people, looking at the opportunities and growth areas that are there, then that becomes a leadership trait. Whereas manager would be looking at, oh, this person is performing, not performing, get him in, get him out, kind of thing. Kuldeep.
Yeah, so when I've had my engagements, right, and this is where I like to go back to what I learned in school, right? I kind of had after my engineering, I got into management information systems, and we get into work behavior, basically. And in the work behavior, what you really start thinking about is what are the different leadership styles. And this is where you kind of start thinking about, as part of your initial observations, is what is the style that this leader is really, practicing in that organization. So what we really start looking at is this one of those leader who basically comes and basically just says, you basically have to do as I say, right? Or versus the leader who basically says, come, let's do this together, right? Or then you have a leader that basically comes and says, what do you guys think? And let's make a joint decision, right? And then there is a leader who basically comes and says, I'm not going to tell you anything. You guys consider the options and then tell us the best way forward, right? I feel like leadership fills into these buckets. And depending on this, right, where we get the leader who has the almost to consider this approach, right, or what do you think approach, they are the ones that really tend to get into the success path of any large-scale transformation versus no, this is what we are going to do, and you just set that stance, right, like some of those cutthroat so-called leaders. Now, with that said, in certain situations, yes, the leader has to make that decision, and it is needed as part of that leadership role. But I feel it's not all the time, right? Like in the general day-to-day things, the leader should be able to decentralize a lot of it until it's like, okay, now I'm going to release, the final, missile, and I'm going to hit that button, right? So that's where I feel like leadership kind of slots into these different almost styles that we have to start thinking about.
Very good point, Kuldeep, that you brought in, which also indicates to the difference between the leader and manager. Leader does not have to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. He knows the vision, but is not saying that I know everything, I will tell you and you follow me, which is what a manager would say. But a leader is somebody who does not mind coming in and saying, you tell me how to do this and how do we achieve success together, because we are targeting on the goal. So that's an important thing. A leader is gaining all that.
Yeah, so Kuldeep, can you hear me right now? Otherwise, I'll have CK.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So Kuldeep, you said something that is really interesting. You said do it together versus, in a way, just tell them that they need to do it. Or so, and I call that inclusiveness, and we all call them different things. But ultimately, doing it together, it's very different from a hierarchical type of a model, right? And delegation is something that is also associated, especially traditionally, as a skill that a leader has or a manager has. So in an environment now that we are collaborating, and the leader and people are collaborating together, and everybody has a very well-defined role in our new environments of Agile. So let's take it to the next level, right? In a traditional environment, people are assigning tasks, or or empowering people in the area where in the scenario where the leaders are used to or managers are used to assigning tasks, and now they're saying, um, let's work together, collaborate together. So how do they create an environment where now people who may be reporting to them are now collaborating with them, right? So how does a leader do that?
So I think it starts with the understanding of the end-to-end flow of work. And it has to be almost established at all levels. So, the way that I look at it, you can decentralize things almost immediately, but you have to understand what is it that you need to keep in control versus what you want to decentralize. So, unless we know the realm and the scope of where we are going to implement this change, that is where we have to take the conversation. So, when you think back in any large organizations, there's, even before this Agile thing came in, right, there were always leadership workshops. There were always, routines where employees have been identified as future leaders and they are put through a leadership workshop. They are given the opportunity to become a leader, right? We've been having, degrees in business administration, and which you come out of college on a leadership path, right? Where this agile thing comes in is really now putting that leadership into a scope of work or a realm of work where we basically now have to say, not only are you just going to lead a certain portfolio, or let's say you're going to lead a team or you're going to lead an organization, you're really thinking about how are you going to create this decentralization model. So how are you going to be inclusive of all your lower level leaderships, right? In any, you have a tiered leadership model and middle management. So first is you got to win them over, right? Once you win them over, then you bring in, now how are you guys going to take this into your individual organizations or teams? And that's how you have to start bringing this entire kind of flow of work with what points can be decentralized into the big picture of the entire leadership model itself.
So
Very true. Just to add to that, while you are bringing up people, other thing that the leader has to do is start trusting the people. The point is, do I trust my team members to do something for the customer or keep customers' interest at the top? Or am I thinking that they are not trustworthy? The if we talk from an emotional perspective or a psychological perspective, when I start giving instructions to people, in my mind, I believe that the people that I am telling to do the work do not know and cannot take decisions. And when I start doing that, I build a behavior in the team that they start not trusting in themselves and their capabilities. And that's why they start coming to me for every question and every decision making. So, what is happening is in this process, we have created not just that I don't trust them, they start not trusting themselves as well, the managers. So, we have to turn this around where we say, okay, you know what is good for the customers because you are closest to the customers, you are out there, you can make the decision. So consider this, and I'm taking this example because Kuldeep was repairing his brakes, and I don't repair my brakes. So if I was to go to a car shop and I find that they changed my brakes and my braking became slower, if it was an organization which was a manager led, highly hierarchical, the person, the mechanic would turn around and say, I don't know what I can do. Let me check with my manager. And would go back and check with the manager, and the manager would then take permission from somebody. And that would take the whole process of time. And whereas the mechanic knows very well that if my car does not break and it doesn't stop, it is going to cost me life. And the best thing or the easiest thing was to change the brake pads at that time, even though the new ones were put in there. So that is where the hierarchical and can actually create a lot of problems. So the manager has to start trusting the people, start giving control. And of course, create the guardrails, as Kuldeep said, what to keep in control, what not to. So if I say that I know this is going to be in the vision of the company or in the values of the company, that we will trust the people, we will trust the employees, we will trust the people, the customers. This is how we are going to follow. Then there is a clear guardrail, and the person can serve in that.
So we are using this word decentralization, right? So what does that mean? There's a question actually somebody was asking in our audience.
So let me give you an example, that real life example of my one of my sports car that I had, which had a problem of battery. The battery will lose charge. I took it to the dealership. The dealership said, okay, it seems that you need a battery change, but we cannot change the battery unless the company approves it. 5 months, the car was with them, and they gave me an Alfa Romeo to drive around for 5 months. And they also returned the money for that 5 month, because they could not make the decision of buying the battery for $300 from Costco and putting it in my car. But they had to wait for the CEO's decision that a car which the battery outside the market, like spare other non-market or non-branded battery from the company itself, could be used. Now that is something where the decision making is happening at the top level, and you would find that that happens very time that even with our children we do that. We tell them that they cannot make the decision, they have to ask daddy or have to ask mommy to do the decision. But if we tell them that is this right for you? I want to go out for party. Is this right for you? Will this affect your education? Will this affect your homework? If you have a test tomorrow, will you be prepared for your test? So I have given them the decision making now, instead of I making the decision for them that going to party is good or bad. Now they're saying, I can go to the party, I can keep my education, my priorities are all set. So setting up that guardrails, they can make the decision within those guardrails and then say, okay, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Kuldeep, anything you want to add to that, or any?
Yeah, just in addition to what CK spoke about decentralization, right? You see this even in very large organizations, even just the way that the organizational structure is created, right? Let's say if you look at like a large financial, everything is not running at the top. You will literally see that they will either take a approach based on the different channels in which they provide service, or the different tiers of technology and business, and they will organize themselves in that manner, right? So there are certain things that are happening in a way enterprise-wide, and then there are certain things that will be given the autonomy that, okay, if there is a decision just how you run a banking center, then you guys make that decision for you. So in a very, simple way, decentralization also, in a certain way has been happening, right? What we are like bringing in now is in terms of within those verticals, how do you decentralize some of the decision making? So that's where there is a little nuance there, that it exists, but it requires a little bit of further review and conversation.
Yeah. Now in transformations, right? Whether it's agile, whether it's digital, or any sort of organization change, when the change is introduced in the organization, what are some of the behaviors we are looking for? Or let's ask it from a different way. Like, what are some of the natural behaviors that you would see people go through as big changes are coming into the organization? Let's just take as Agile as an example. We have a large organization. Now we are, the whole company is going towards, now they're going to start using actively at a senior level as well, portfolio management, program management, not only at the team level. Now we're going to start using some of the best practices with Agile, using one of the scaling frameworks or whatever. Now, in those areas, what are some of the behaviors we would like the leadership to take? Or, what are some of the challenges that you might see them running into, and how do they go around them? Just talk through one or two of those that you can think of. Like, because ultimately we are all humans, right? So, and we all deal with change differently.
So very simple. If you start looking at that, I want the decision making to shift, right? And what you're saying is it's an agile organization. So let's talk about a place where we are developing the software and building a customer support system. Any kind of company, I'm building customer support system. If I start funding projects and I start putting money that you get $200 to go in and take care of your customers, $500 for the customer to get access to the system, I am managing control. But whereas if I say that I know to run your department, it takes $1,000, I am giving you $1,000, but ensure that these $1,000 are spent to keep the customer happy and increase the customer satisfaction by 10%. I have taken away my controls on putting in people, because now when I start putting in allocating budget to different activities, I am also telling you to do activities. I am not telling you to get results. So that is something that we call lean portfolio management. That is the easiest thing that the management or the leaders at the top can start showing, that I trust your judgment. And they're telling this to their middle managers or middle layers, that I trust your judgment that you are going to spend this money in the right direction. And I can have a reporting structure where I say how you were spending your money. But when I start budgeting that way, I am saying I don't trust you. That's why I am making the decision for you. And if you go back and look into the organizations, they spend, most of the managers spend about 15% to 20% of their time going through this mundane exercise of annual budgeting and reviewing.
Very
Right?
true.
So same thing when it comes to the developers. If my action, so what happens? The work that gets delivered. I have a product owner or I have a customer facing person who is deciding that I need to increase customer satisfaction. Now, when they start doing the work distribution to the person that actually does the work, we are telling them, give this indicator or put this information in your field, show this thing. We are not talking about the outcome, we start talking about the activity to which is delivered. So that is where again, now the person is only thinking from becoming successful in doing that activity, not becoming successful in driving the outcome. So at every level, we are making decisions for them. And if they have to do anything which is outside that activity, they have to go back and look at the manager. Am I doing it right? Should I do it or not? What do you suggest? And if 10 people are going to the manager to ask that person gets bottlenecked. And maybe that person has to ask somebody else. So
Yeah. Kuldeep, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually agree with CK, right? I think this is something where what is the vision that we're creating, right? And I think that is where the leadership style again comes in. That can they help visualize what the target state is going to really look like for my organization, and to do that, what do we have to do, right? So there's been significant research done in this area too, right? What is it? It's called like the 8-step change model, right? I think Cotter. And when you think about it, what did that leader really do? We created that vision of change, and then he took it through the process, right? And then that is where they realize at various steps that, okay, I need to be able to empower others. And this is where understanding, as CK mentioned, you understand the whole, not just the sliver of small one team or two teams, right? You've got to understand the organization, how work is flowing through there, to then realize that where are my opportunities to get better. And then when you provide that autonomy to your lower levels to start making some of those decisions, right, on their own, they start coming back as the true change that you're able to create in your organization.
So when I'm reflecting back to the values that we were talking about as far as leadership is concerned. CK, you talked about vision, alignment, trust, and Kuldeep, and what you were mentioning about it's almost like, as you were saying, that leadership doesn't have to do with agile, non-agile. Ultimately, leadership existed before, and we've always been talking about leadership workshops. What you just talked about, like begin with end in mind. If you look at Stephen Covey's, all the 7 habits of highly effective people. I remember taking that, man, how long ago, right? So, but a lot of that still comes into play, right? Like just rightfully as you said. Um, and So I guess the one of the question I want to ask is we talked about vision, alignment, trust, things like that. Where does the domain expertise come in, right? How do we how important is for a leader or a manager to understand the business, like technology themselves, or is that something that they count on others, or so just let's talk about that a little bit and tell me how important it is for them to focus on the technology domain that they are working on versus these values that we just talked about.
See, I think that's why, Faiz, I don't like to talk about just a technology domain, right? When you're talking about change, it has to be the entire journey, right? So, I worked with a coach for almost 4 years in a previous engagement, and I loved the terminology he uses. His name is Latard Williams, and he then became transformation lead at McKesson Healthcare, and now he's freelancing also. But what he basically came in with was basically what is your concept of cash, and do you understand how you are going from concept to cash? And he will ask that question as a coach to a developer. He will ask it to a product owner. He will ask it to middle managers, testers, anybody who comes in his way that he's engaging with. He starts with that, right? Because at different levels, the answer to that question is very different. To the highest level of leadership, they need to know that there is this flow coming in and where are my opportunities to improve in the flow itself.
Right.
As I come down to the lower levels, I am becoming part of that flow. I may not know the end-to-end flow at that state, right? Hence, when we are trying to implement a change or we're trying to transform, what we really have to look at is, have we accounted for those minute details as we map this flow to truly understand what we're trying to improve? I mean, today organizations are saying we want to transform, right?
Yeah.
What if you are already operating in a highly efficient manner in the way that you're operating today? I don't need to do Scrum or Kanban just because I'm going to go Agile, right?
Yeah.
I may already be Agile and not even know it. If my time to market is good, my efficiency is there, my quality is good, my customers are happy, I'm already Agile.
Yeah.
I don't have to say that I do, daily stand-up and I have to do this way and only because I have a backlog. No. I completely think that we have to think about that entire way organizations are operating. And what is it that you're really trying to change?
Very nice.
So that's exactly the point, that it's not about the workflow, Kanban, etc. It's about, are we delivering value to our customer? Do we know who our customer is? Are we inspecting and adapting? Are we looking at where we could improve? And is that improvement even worth doing it? Just like what Kuldeep was saying. So it's not that you have to improve every time. It may not be worth an improvement. It may not be cost effective for you. So are you making it? So look at it. What you're delivering, is it feasible, viable, valuable? And if that is, and if your customer is satisfied with you and the customer satisfaction scores are going up, then you are working in the right direction. Your employee satisfaction scores are going up, you are working in the right direction, because these are all stakeholders, right? So are your stakeholders happy with what you are doing? Are we even looking at that? Or are we in our own vision? And I talk about this. Many of us, I come across agile coaches who are working in the service of agility, or there are certain people who carry certain designations with some organization. They're working in the service of that certification, not for the customer. So whenever I'm called in to ask for, we want to transform, my question is, what problem are you trying to solve?
Exactly. Yep.
Do you know what your problem is? And if your problem is XYZ, is this transformation going to help you achieve that success? And that's when you start sitting with a CEO, and you will start seeing a CEO is being evaluated based on the cost of delivery, the top line, bottom line, stakeholder value. And that's exactly what they're looking at: customer satisfaction scores. And if they're a public listed company, then how the stock prices are reacting to whatever you are doing. If that is what they're being looked at, they are going to control and monitor the organization based on that. Back to your question, they are not looking at, none of the CEOs have to be technically savvy to deliver that thing. What they are looking at, do I have the right leaders who can bring in that value and can deliver the into those 5 parameters that we are being evaluated as an organization? Is the vision gap going there? Am I sending the value system right? So that is where entire development happens. And if things are happening in that direction, the leader would be hands off, would be willing to give you freedom to go and try. One of the things that we did not say is that opportunity to fail and learn would be there,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That is something a leader provides, that safe space, so that you can fail easily, you can learn the experience and come back and succeed, because experience is valuable for the organization to grow. But if things are not happening, then you start micromanaging, and when you start getting micromanaging, then you start controlling activities and time and everything of that sort.
I love that. In fact, we might come back to that. There is a question, I'm going to put it up there on the screen, from Binoy. Thanks for asking, Binoy. What behavior changes and skill sets developments empowers enterprise leaders to set and enable a good enterprise agility vision? Good question, because I mean, ultimately, the leadership themselves need to, some have exhibit some of those behavior changes and skill sets to be able to do that. So, what are either of your thoughts on that?
I talk about 5 different things that a leader needs to, 5 transitions that a manager to leader are required. And it don't go by the designation. We started the conversation that way. If it is all the behavior that I'm exhibiting tells me whether I'm a manager or not. So if I am planning, then I'm a manager. And if I am helping people align to the outcomes, to the delivery dates, and to the compliances that are required by the organization. So moving from planning to aligning is one of the change that I would say is important. Moving from organizing to helping people organize themselves, promoting them to do the organization themselves is one of the things that is required. Stop directing and start motivating. So you're not giving directions, you are helping people find their own direction and stay aligned to the ultimate vision. Stop instructing and start coaching, because by instructing, you are the knowledgeable person. By coaching, you are making everybody else knowledgeable. And from managing to supporting.
I think I really like that approach, right? Because what I've observed is with leadership one-on-ones, right? The biggest thing is being part of a lot of sessions to simply observe how leaders and managers, in a way, conduct themselves.
Right.
Because what we really come down to is that there are certain behaviors that are already embedded in people that have come in them as part of the, I guess, the culture of the company, the enterprise, the organization. And especially when you look at these transformations, sometimes we work with managers and leaders who have been there for like 15 years, 20 years, and they're just set in those ways of working, right? So by being able to witness how they are executing in this, I would like to say, legacy mode, right? And now we are saying that we want you to become more of a leader that can lead by example, take people towards outcomes. It's that observation, and then like that, when we say, hey, why are you a coach, right? That's my one-on-one coaching. I'm working on with that leader, right? Is here is where I'm observing you have opportunities. By the way, you're doing a great job, in all these different areas. But it's almost like I feel for a leader it's a highly customized path that says, you're awesome on your day-to-day things. I mean, if there's a fire drill, I want you. That's it. Don't change the way you're doing it, right? But in other days, you may be able to let go a little bit and let the team manage things, right? Rather than you stepping in, you just need to be the guide. So that's where I feel like, Binoy's question is a little deep, right? It has the sense of saying, okay, wait, I know that there are different leaders who have different styles, and it's not a single path that I can say, if you're going from this style to this style, then okay, you're going to go A, B, and C. I may have to take you this way, depending on how I work with you, and then you adapt some of those new qualities, how you exhibit those new qualities, and then we keep moving forward.
Yes.
So I was reading the question. I was like, this one's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
By the way, Binoy is a very intelligent person, very good change management person. I worked with him about 3 years ago, and he's an excellent leader there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we'll bring Binoy in one of our future conversations in that.
Yes, we should. He has depth of knowledge and experience.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Friends, maybe because what Kuldeep brought in was a very important point, that 15 years somebody has been in a managerial role or in an organization and they act something. Maybe in one of the future conversation we should talk about how to help people transform, because what happens is, in this 15 year of experience, they have seen certain people how they became successful, and that's what built their journey. And when we go in there and we say that you have to transform, that transformation will not happen overnight, because 15 years took them to build that personality. And how do we get into helping them grow into another organization, another style of working? Takes passion, but also takes patience to get to that. So we should talk about that. Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, there is exhibiting the right behaviors from leadership is so important. I'm looking at my notes when you say leadership is doing the organization versus letting people do that organization themselves. And I mean, some of us, all of us actually who have been around for a while have even done exercises where, as we go into the new organizations, we let the organizations people choose what role they want to play, and it's just phenomenal to see that. But and then instruction versus coaching, managing versus supporting, we also talked about a little bit of command and control and things like that. And there is a big shift that happens in a person who is managing or an organization or leading an organization, where they are used to giving instructions and everybody is used to hearing those instructions. Now, talking about that, I mean, there are projects that people are put together, and then there are, and we all know, frankly, right, in 20-30 years, when however long experience we have had, projects have been created from the beginning. And we all know that as project plans start, and as we start executing them, things change and project plans change. And we have this tension when people start to feel that, oh no, we are not going to meet that deadline. And with that, there is that sense of, oh, are we going to fail, right? So as we go through this behavior that an organization has, where, we have a plan, and now we are actually feeling like we're going to get, maybe fall behind. And then there's this, concern about failure. So I guess what in my experience, what I've seen is people who are very much now working for managers or leaders. In this case, I'm an individual contributor. I'm used to working in an environment where, I'm being measured on how often do I deliver on time, how often actually I deliver. And now you're telling me that, failure is acceptable in our new world. We want to talk about it. And I think still a lot of the organizations are not thinking and behaving like that, because ultimately they think that if they are not able to deliver, or, certain way, with certain requirements, with certain timelines, things like that, then that is set up as a failure. So how do we coach leadership who is in that environment, right? And regardless of what area they come from, technology, non-technology, and because ultimately people cannot control 100% of what they have in the plant. There are things that change, dependencies change, infrastructure change, requirements change. So how do we create a culture where failure is acceptable and allowing people to, learn from it?
So, guys, I think you're going to define failure.
Hmm.
Yes.
All right. So, failure is different for different companies.
Very nice. Yeah.
If I'm a company like Facebook or Amazon that is able to use technology and update the website, 20 times a day, okay? I clicked on a product and the product didn't load. That's fine. I'll come back after a couple hours and buy the product, right? I'm a financial. I go into my account and it says my balance is zero. I mean, that failure is completely different, right?
Yeah.
I was going to do a withdrawal at that time. I go to an ATM, it says system not working. That failure is different. So I think it again goes up to that, our appetite for failure and what do we want to call as failure, right? Delivery date, okay, you want to consider that as a failure. We first have to align on that what will be considered a failure, because at different levels, failure is completely a different definition itself.
Understand this very, very nicely, just aligning to that. Does Apple announce which day it is launching the new iPhone today?
Very interesting.
Or putting pressure of unnecessary deadlines because somebody in a room thought about so, rather than having things in place for it to be successful. So Apple only announces when their event is happening a few days before. Right? It does not say that September 1st every year we will have a new iPhone coming in. And they don't tell you that what is going to be in that iPhone, because they know that they can be flexible with what they can bring in, right? So definition of failure and what is or is not really a failure for the organization has to be something that has to be thought of. I was working with a financial institution recently, and they were talking about they had to do thing A and thing B, and they could only do one of them, and both had a timeline. So my question to them was, why are we doing these things? And they said that if we do thing A, which was a regulatory compliance, if we don't do that, there is going to be $1 million of fine every month. And we said, okay, for thing B, what is it? And they said, if we do that, then we are going to make about $15 million a month because we will be able to deliver. I said, then isn't that answer very simple? You are trying to do both the things and still not going to complete it. We know because the teams are saying so. Can we not focus on thing B to complete first and then on thing A? They said, but there will be $1 million fine. I said, but you are definitely sure that if I finish thing B, I'm going to make $15 million. If I have a fine to be paid for 1 month or 2 months, that's $1 million. I'm still sure to make $14 million a month. Is that something good or bad? And they said, oh, the way you put it, it makes sense that $14 million definitely coming into our bank is more profitable than not having $15 million as well as giving a fine of $1 million. So we said, okay, now we know the happy path. Let's work in that direction. So that is something. But again, what Agile teaches us is that things are not black and white, right? There is a gray line. So failure is not good or bad. Success is not clearly defined. So where we talk about failures, like the condition that Kuldeep talked about, a bank ATM and the systems are down. If a system is down, we can be working towards limiting the scope of failure or bringing the failure closer to where the work is so that the impact of the failure is not to the customer. Right? If a product in Amazon is not visible or shows out of stock for some time, it only affects very limited number of customers for that product that were trying to buy at that time. But my Google services are down, or my say video conferencing that you are doing goes down, it affects multiple people. The system gets a bad name. So organizations have to start thinking and organizing, and that's where when we say organizations start thinking, the leaders in the organization have to start thinking, what is important to me, what is urgent to me, what is necessary for me, and then prioritize. So those simple prioritizations that we were doing before, and now we of course give them fancy names in Agile, are still important.
You know what? I love your example of Apple.
Yeah.
And right away, I thought about Windows. And remember the days when the announcements were made, and even the Windows 95 was called Windows 95, but it didn't come on in a 95, and I don't even think it came till later in 96, or 97 came when, right? So, I love that example because and uh, to me, as I'm listening to you guys, expectation setting and defining the and creating that expectation with the business, the end customer, because ultimately, like Kuldeep, in your example, as soon as we think about financial institution, or even anytime we have revenues being generated in an environment like that, just to say failure is acceptable, and people are saying, oh, every day, if there is a issue that comes into the you know this retail platform that we have built, I mean, to them, we don't want to encourage that environment where there is like intentionally people are kind of causing certain failures. But to me, as soon as I think about setting the expectation, and then at the same time creating this awareness, to say that employees, we are expecting you to do your best. And that's where, when you give them that, and again, I think we were talking about those guardrails earlier, right? So when you create those right guardrails around the people who are responsible doing the work, and then you, at that time, you basically give them that environment that, do your best, we will fail and learn through those journeys and the experiences. To me, I personally, I've learned so much from that. I mean, today, I've learned in the beginning that, the platform we are doing live streaming on, we don't have a way to dial in. It's all based on internet. So my dear friend Kuldeep is having issues, who's one of my two speakers, right? And so, I mean, and I'm going to learn from it, for our next, experience. So, and this is the beautiful part about it, right? And, is it a failure, or at a minimum, it's an opportunity to learn, right?
Yes.
Things still moved on, right? And so those are really, and I think that I think that just being able to think about it is like a huge step, right? Because often we don't even get to that level to say, okay, what will really happen? Like, CK, in your example, you just said, and I wasn't working for a healthcare insurance company, and they're like, we have to launch this new plan by this date in this state, and if we don't do it, we are not going to have subscribers, blah blah blah. But ultimately, you have to set that framework through which people are going to be successful in it. And what if they are not able to do that? So ultimately, you have to be still prepared for that, because I'm remembering that environment, and people were so tense and just worrying about launching that health plan in a certain date. Half of their day was just spent worrying about it, right? So I think creating that environment, to me, and being able, and again defining what a failure means, and to me, the earlier we start talking about it, the better. In fact, that kind of creating that environment.
So I tell, when I do leadership coaching, I tell them failure is inevitable. How to address it is in your control. So are you going to look at that or not?
Right.
So how are you going to handle it? Just like you rightly said, experience comes from failure, right? Good decision making comes from experience. So for the right decisions to be made, for the good decisions to be made, you need to have that collective experience which comes from collective failures. Success does not give you experiences.
Very true.
So work on that. I think we are on time. Yep. So
we will actually talk a lot. We will talk about this topic in particular. Kuldeep, any last words from you on this failure versus success and accepting failure?
I'm just absorbing what CK just said. Actually, I love that last line that he said. I think that's the perfect ending line for this session.
Let's bring it back to CK then. CK, what are some of your poetic thoughts, and it's always nice to end with some statement from you. So let's do that.
I think that we have a lot of potential in all the people around. let leaders identify the potential that is in each one of their team members and grow that potential to become a stronger organization. That's
Very
what
nice.
I would like to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you, Kuldeep, CK. Loved hanging out with you as always. Look forward to more sessions like this. Thank you, folks in the audience who are still with us. Those who joined earlier, asked your questions, sent us comments. Feedback always welcome. Looking forward to learning from all of our audience members as well. As CK, you pointed out, we have a great, we got. I'm going to reach out to Binoy, and I'm sure there are many other great teachers who are listening to us as well, and looking forward to collaborating with them. So our goal is to create an environment where we can learn from each other, create a knowledge sharing environment, regardless of what experience, or how much experience we all come from. So looking forward to more sessions, guys. Again, thank you very much for taking time on a Sunday morning. Apologies for any confusions, but look forward to making things better. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.